moving on, the Supreme Court, as we just said, has ruled that while former US President Donald Trump is immune from criminal prosecution for official acts taken in office, he is not immune for unofficial acts. And let's speak now with the founding director at the UCL Centre on US Politics, Dr. Thomas Gift. Thomas, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Would you mind just clarifying for people who aren't of a legal mindset precisely what that means in terms of official stuff versus unofficial comments made?
So thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you. The first thing that I'll say is that this is somewhat of a complex case, and it's somewhat of a nuanced answer that the Supreme Court has given. Basically, there are three different categories of presidential actions. One is purely personal conduct. One is core constitutional conduct. And then the third is kind of this gray area in between where it's not necessarily clear. When it comes to core constitutional duties, this is the Article 2 of the Constitution. So things like overseeing immigration or overseeing the military, anything that is kind of constitutionally provided, that's absolutely immune. And then anything that a candidate is doing just purely in a personal context, that has no immunity. But there's a huge kind of gray area and lots of ambiguity about sort of what constitutes core constitutional duties versus personal whenever you get into things like campaigning.
And so what that means in this case, to be absolutely clear, Thomas, is that in terms of the January the 6th insurrection, as it was called, that's what this is ostensibly about. They're trying to make out the comments that Donald Trump made as president at that time contributed towards this. This now means, because of the way the vote went, 6 in favour, Republicans, 3 against, Democrats in this vote, Donald Trump will simply say, well, I made those comments as president, therefore I'm immune. Therefore, Thomas, knocking this into a cocked hat.
Well, that's what he's going to make, that case. And so essentially the ruling is going to get pushed back to the judge in the U.S. District Court in Washington, Judge Tanya Chutkan, and she will be responsible for deciding whether those statements were his constitutional duties or whether they were provided in a personal context. But it is really unclear because presidents do all sorts of activities that are kind of right on the border of campaigning and politics versus, core policy decisions. And, the one thing that we know about Donald Trump is he's probably blurred that line more than any prior president that we can remember in recent memory.
But, Thomas, what this basically means, ambiguity, as you say, is a picnic for the lawyers. They feast on ambiguity. They will push this down the road. They'll try and push it definitely beyond November the 5th, that crucial date of the presidential election in America. With that in mind, the likelihood, the probability of there being an effective legal challenge against Donald Trump seems to have diminished with this ruling. The likelihood of him being the primary candidate has increased. And if you believe the polling, if you believe what happened since that debate, the likelihood with this ruling is that the legal challenge against Donald Trump has been derailed by this, and therefore the likelihood of him becoming the next president just increased.
I 100% agree with you. So a trial certainly will not happen before the election because this is going to be pushed down to the district court. That's good news for Trump. If he wins in November, which the polls suggest that he at least has a marginal edge, which has grown after you suggested after the debate, then he could shut down all of these prosecutions unilaterally because the president presides over the Department of Justice, appoints the Attorney General, and so effectively could say we're getting rid of all these criminal prosecutions. But I have to agree with you. I mean, the last week or so, all the momentum has been with Trump. All the discussion, of course, has been by the sort of absolutely cataclysmic performance of Joe Biden in the debate. And then you have this, more good news for Trump. So he's riding a high, certainly, at the moment.